is CHRIS Aikin Presents, and I, of course, am Chris Aiken. And joining me today is a guy that barely ever works. I'm starting to wonder if he's still in the music business, as little output as he puts out. Well, and you know that's a lie, because it seems like once a quarter I have Jeff on here to talk about a new project. And yet again, we have another one. This one is called Complicated. It is a solo release from one of my favorite guys in the business and one of the best vocalists in the business. He is Mr. Jeff Scott Soto. Jeff, how are you, man?
I'm good, Chris. I'm not on camera here because I'm actually half asleep. So I've got all your answers. All were already worked out and scripted. So nice. All I have to do is read them. But I'm in bed right now. The lights are out. If you saw me, you wouldn't even recognize me.
and you know what? We do this interview so many times, I probably get asked the same question. So you did a new record called Insert Record Here.
Exactly.
Well, dude, we got to talk about Complicated, man, because great release. Absolutely loving it. Shows some differences, which for me personally, I'll make my own 2-second review here. I'll say this is the most diverse record that you've done since probably Beautiful Mess. Does that resonate to you?
I like that. I'm gonna say it's more. I would say let me see. I would say it's closer to like Damage Control in terms of. Okay. It has a little bit of everything. Beautiful Mess for me was more diverse in terms of I was going a completely different direction, even to the point where that's why I called it Beautiful Mess, because I knew my normal fans, the people who were buying my records still at that point, were probably going to listen and go, man, this album's a mess. And for me, it's a beautiful mess. And it's funny that Damage Control was the album that came after, because when Beautiful Mess didn't sell, which I kind of knew it wasn't going to resonate so well with the average JSS fare, Damage Control was exactly that. That album was damage control to what I did with the mess that I made. So, and it's funny, Complicated is that people are asking me, is it complicated? Like, is something complicated going on in my life? Is there something in the lyrics behind? Is there a theme behind the term complicated? And to be honest with you, when I was doing all the interviews for the Duets album, one of the journalists at the end of one of the interviews brought up, if I went to somebody who doesn't know who Jeff Scott Soto is, doesn't know anything about you or your music, and I wanted to introduce them to you, what would be the best way to describe you as an artist? Are you a metal guy? Are you a ballads guy, an AOR guy? What would be the best way to describe you? And I said, well, it's complicated. Right. And it's funny because it resonated in a positive way when I'm just a massive student of Queen, for instance. Sure. I was a student of Queen, and that band, they left no stone unturned. They tapped into every style of music, genre, everything you wanted out of that band, they did. And I always wanted to be that kind of artist. When you're so influenced by a band like Queen, you're naturally going to go that same route of trying to do everything and anything that makes you tick as an artist, as it makes you tick genres, breaking down walls and barriers musically. And that to me is why the album is complicated. It's called Complicated because it distinguishes who I am as an artist more so than the actual music itself.
Sure. Well, Jeff, listening to this release and all your releases really, but as you've gotten further and further along in your career, I always wonder where you keep finding ideas from, because you've written about everything in the world, I think, in your life, and then yet you come up with more and more stuff every time. So where are the themes for this album from, as well as do you keep like a running tab of things that you want to write about for different releases that you do?
Dude, all you got to do is wake up and turn on CNN or Fox News or MSNBC, whatever your flavor of the month or week is or day is. All you got to do is turn on the news. All you got to do is open up a website of information and news and things that are going on in the world besides what's going on in your own life. And there's always a plethora of things to write about. I write in double entendre anyway, so there's so many songs I write about that you might think you know what I'm writing about, and you absolutely don't. It could be about something else completely, but it could relate to other things. And that's one of the things that makes it easier for me to write. It makes it harder and easier because if you're going to write a lyric like "I want to rock and roll all night and party every day," you know you're not talking about world events and between politics and religion. You're talking about one thing. It's clear and obvious what you're writing about. But when there are other things you can write about that can be equated into a completely different scenario, circumstance, that's when it gets a little more interesting. And that's how I'm able to continue writing and coming up with new subjects and themes.
Sure. Do you ever look at maybe your back catalog or maybe when you're writing now and look at it from an introspective place where you say, well, I'm not that way anymore.
Absolutely.
Is it difficult, not difficult to write, but difficult to examine yourself that way and then write about it?
Question. I'm so glad you tapped into that, because I wish more people would bring that side more up, more than just talking about the songs and the general directions of the songs. There was a time, especially after the whole Malmsteen situation, I was kind of catapulted as the guitar player singer. I was a metal guy. I was kind of lumped in with a certain style and category of what was expected of me at that point as a singer, as a writer. And at some point, I'm like, I love bands like Rat and Motley Crue and Bon Jovi. They're all writing about chicks and relationships and sex and all that. And none of my material has that. So there was a point in time where a good stretch of maybe 15, 20 years where I was writing about more sexual content, love, and all that kind of stuff. You write about that now, and it's like borderline creepy, or
right.
Kind of like, so wait, you're trying to say that you're trying to, there's a lot of like Whitesnake lyrics that they're kind of silly now for a 70-year-old to be singing. And I get the same way now as a 50-year-old or 50 going on 60 soon to be singing about those contents. So you try not to tap into things that are going to look silly just for the sake of doing them, just for the sake of having that kind of content. You realize the majority of the audience that's listening to your music are probably your age too. So to continue writing about sexual situations and it starts getting a little weird, a little awkward. So absolutely, I absolutely tap into more things that are relative to my life right now, the age that I'm at, and the age of the people that are listening to my music, because that's the only true way to keep the whole thing connected.
Right. And you are right, man. It's definitely weird to hear, I don't know, Winger singing She's Only 17 when they're 60-year-olds. It's like,
as cool as the song Kittens Got Claws was when it came out, it's kind of silly when you listen to those lyrics now. It's like, ooh, or I'm not going to sing about cherry pie when I'm 57 this year. I'm not going to be singing about cherry pie anymore. Those are the kind of things that you kind of have to reflect on. You can't just say, well, I used to do that, so I'm going to continue doing that, because at some point it just seems kind of weird and creepy.
No, I agree with you, man. Well, Jeff, we got to talk about Alessandro Del Vecchio, the guy that is on every record that is ever produced ever now. He literally, if he's not writing, playing, or producing a record, I don't think it comes out anymore. This guy is everywhere. And obviously
I really feel bad about, because he does get a lot of flack. It's the traditional till the end of time tale about when somebody's nobody, you're championing them, and as they're working their way up the ladder, and then when they finally get up that ladder, all you want to do is chip and knock them down. And that's a lot of what Alessandro's dealing with. The fact that he finally is hitting his stride. All the people he's working with, everybody respects him. He's doing some great quality stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But there's a lot of fans out there going, oh no, not this guy again. Oh, this sounds the same. They're attacking him for no reason.
Sure.
Where Alessandro's, I absolutely will stand behind the fact that everything he does is identified for the artist. He's not just doing a bunch of dribble that he would be able to release himself and other people putting their voices and their talents over. Every single note he wrote for me on the 2 records that we've done together was based on what only is meant for me to do. He wouldn't take any of those songs and take them to any of the other project that he was working on and say, oh, this might work for you. It didn't work for Jeff. And so he really, that's the difference between somebody like Alessandro just doing a lot for the sake of doing a lot, and the sake of and somebody like him who actually does pinpoint and identify each individual note he's doing with those people just for those people. It might sound like it could be use and utilized by others. But it's not the case, and I think it's wrong for anybody to attack him in any negative way, because he's just
Sure.
one of the nicest guys on the planet, one of the most respectful guys on the planet, and one of the most talented. And so, you know what? Give it a rest. The guy is so
Right.
good. I stand behind everything that I'm doing with him, and I stand by everything that he is doing with everybody else, because he's that good.
Sure. Well, to be clear, I wasn't shitting on. I love Alessandro. We had him on. We had him on my other show, Aftershocks. I don't know, right before the Edge of Forever tour started.
Okay.
And we had him on just to talk about songwriting. That show we do kind of more behind the scenes of the business, and we had him on just to talk about songwriting. And it's amazing the way he explained how his process is, where he said, like, he'll send you a couple of emails, or you guys will trade a couple of ideas, and then he'll sit down and write like 20 songs, and then he'll send them to you and say, okay, these are what I think fits you. And I personally was fascinated by that a guy that has, I don't know, 1,000 published songs doesn't just have a box full of songs.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And to be honest with you, this is why my creative process is the way it is. I'm not so much a music writer anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I've written a lot of songs in the past where I've written everything, or I was part of the actual music side of things. But I got to the point where I'm not as skilled a musician as I wish I was, or that I probably should be at this point. I'm good enough to what I do and how I do it, but the songs that I'm working on now, I don't want them to be as elementary as they would be if I were writing everything, or if I were a part of the writing on the music end. I would rather work with people who excel and they're so good at what they do in their craft, whether it's a guitar player, whether it's a keyboard player. They're so good they could come up with things I could never even dream of, because they're that accomplished on their instruments. Those are the people I want writing the music end of the things that I'm putting my voice over, because my strengths are in lyrics and melodies, and if their strengths are in the music, we're going to have a better outcome than if I'm sitting there going, change to this chord. I think this should go to this part. And, you know, I'm not as accomplished as a musician to be able to call all those shots. I know what I want to hear. And when it's given to me, I run with that, and I just kind of fill in the blanks or color in the canvas. And that's where my strengths lie.
Did you learn that from Sons of Apollo?
No, but Sons of Apollo was kind of a continuation of exactly what I was doing that already, even with Talisman, even as far back as the 90s. I was basically saying, guys, you supply the music, I'll finish it with the lyrics and the melodies, because I would rather do that than try to sit there with a guitar and come up with a riff that the guitar player is going to say, dude, that's lame. That's terrible. Or why are you going to force me to play something so elementary when they could come up with something a little more interesting for the listener to be listening to before I start singing? And that's always been my ideal. So Sons of Apollo was already, that ideal was already established. You know, I'm not going to go to Portnoy and Bumblefoot and these major craftsmen of their instruments and say,
Sure.
Hey guys, why don't you just play straight here? And why don't you just, they know exactly what they're doing. And then I know where my strengths are to kind of complete what they're already doing.
Sure. But you do realize that most people think of you vocally in that same regard, right?
Well, yeah. And that's going to come with the territory anyways. Even singing on a song that I have nothing to do with, I'm going to get credit for the final outcome, the final product, because nobody really knows the course of how we got to that final product. All they know is if they like it, they're going to glorify the person or the persons that are making that stand out. I could sing a standout performance on a song I have nothing to do with. I just basically was hired to sing it, but I'm going to get all the accolades if it's a good song and it becomes popular, just because I'm the one representing it.
Sure. What do you hold as more important to you? As a lyricist, do you hold the ability to write a hook that actually absolutely hooks into somebody, or do you hold the ability to tell a story that people can relate to, even if it's not what you meant, but the fact that it holds great meaning to the audience?
Man, Chris, you're batting 100 today with a question. I like that. To be honest with you, it's kind of a combination of both, rather.
Okay.
If it means something to me, that's the only way I can imagine or hope it's going to mean something to someone else. So it's got to hit me a certain way. I can't do something thinking about others, of how they're going to hear it, how they're going to feel when they hear it, unless I'm feeling that already. And so it has to start with me, because it's you can't fake that. You can't.
Sure.
That's the kind of shit that when you start faking it and you start trying to think of along the terms of others, then it's just becoming it's becoming a job. For me, it's got to be beyond the job. It's got to be personal. It's got to be emotional. It's got to mean something to me. Otherwise, I know it's not going to mean anything to somebody else.
Sure. And speaking of the emotional songs, you definitely have, I mean, you have several uncomplicated. I think the one that everybody's going to point to is Until I See You Again.
Ah, I'm so glad you're the first one that's brought that up.
Really?
Bring up the singles and bringing up other songs. And that's to me, that's my dynamite on the record. That when I listen to that song, it brings me, it gets me emotionally, lyrically. It truly is. It's one of the, originally it started as a song. And I'm sorry to cut you off, but
That's good.
Thematically, it started as a song that was kind of what we were all feeling out of the whole COVID situation, a lockdown. It could be, you could have the same feeling about not seeing grandma as you can about having a long distance relationship and not seeing somebody that you haven't seen in a long time. And you can even extend it to the audience. I can say Until I See You Again was my kind of swan song, or my I miss you guys to my audience. So you can equate it lyrically to those three categories, but even remove me from that, and so many others can actually put their own interpretation of what that means to them. So yeah, that's my M80 on the record. That's my big ass firecracker.
No doubt, man. Well, dude, you mentioned the singles, and obviously you have two videos out there right now. Last to Know, I think, is the one that stood out to me, just because it looks like you guys are having a lot of fun shooting the video. So talk a little bit about why you chose that song for a video.
Well, on these records, on these releases, I try to keep the label involved as much as possible. When you think about the old, the overbloated budgets back in the day, that you had, you could record an album for $350,000 and a video for another 200,000 and tour support and all that stuff. A lot of that was under the microscope and control of the label. If they're going to invest that kind of money in you, they're pretty much telling you what you can and can't do. You want to experiment, try something, a little waltz in here, a little disco feel. No, I don't think so. Not on my time. I'm giving you a lot of money to do what I'm expecting you to do. And nowadays that ideal is gone because the budgets are less. The labels are basically they're hoping that the artist is still resonating, but they're not as much in control of the overall picture. And that I try to keep Frontiers involved in it because I want them to be excited. I don't want them to think, okay, well, we're giving Jeff money to make a record and he's just going to turn in what he turns in and we have to be happy with it. I want them to be excited about the stuff we're doing. And because if you get that excitement from them, they're going to get behind it and they're going to do the things that they might not be doing for some of the other artists or the other bands that are basically saying, here's the album. This is what you're going to get. I don't want to hear anything about it. I want to be excited about the things that I'm doing for them and with them. And that being said, I ask them to please choose what they feel should be the singles. Because if you ask me, I'll say, well, song number 1 to 11 should be a single.
Right.
I'll always find a rhyme or reason to release every single song as a single. So I'm the last person to know.
Sure.
And the only time there was a debate or that there was me going back to them and saying, I'm not so crazy about that decision. Let's do this one, was Love is the Revolution. I thought that song was a single, and I really strongly felt that song should be released as a single as opposed to one of the other ones that they chose. And they were very respectful, and they allowed me to say yes to that.
Sure. Is it, and I'm making a guess here, but I'm guessing that you, at this point, because of all the work that you've done with Frontiers, that you have a friendship as well as a business relationship with Serafino. Is it comfortable to have that relationship with somebody who, in essence is kind of your boss, that where it could go bad at any given moment?
I'm it's more like family, to be honest with you. And yes, we do have to find a separation between business and friendship slash family,
Sure.
because there are some things that have to be done in a business way. You can't take them personally. It's so easy to take things the wrong way when it's a business decision and you take it personally. So I've learned, especially with them, because I started with them when pretty much they were just a brand new label when I signed with them in 2002. This is our 20-year anniversary. So in 20 years, we know how to talk to each other. We know how to deal with one another. But more importantly, I know what they expect out of me. In the beginning stages, doing albums like Beautiful Mess and trying to tap into other things, I realized I was trying to do things that they didn't necessarily agree with. Even the band Soto, they turned down Soto. The first Soto record was supposed to be my next solo album, but it was too heavy and too alternative for them in that sense. They weren't interested, and they said, "Please, you can take it somewhere else, but we're not interested in this as a Jeff Scott Soto album." Right. And that's why I turned Soto into a band with another label, etc. They allowed me to go that route, as opposed to saying, you can't release this at all, even under a different name. You know, they at least gave me that respect, and that to me speaks volumes. Is they don't have a stranglehold over me to be able to do the things that I want to do and still want to try and experiment with. But on the other hand, when I do something for them, I know exactly what they're expecting out of me, and I give it to them, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
No question. All right, Jeff, one last question, and this is kind of a personal one that you could either dodge or not. It's just something I wonder about.
Okay.
I saw it on Facebook, on your Facebook recently, that you celebrated your whatever number anniversary, 10, 12, whatever it is. And I know I was married for a while, for 23 years, and that fell apart. And believe me, I couldn't be 2 hours late getting home without getting grief.
Right.
You as a guy that has so many bands and so many projects, and you're on the road so much. How do you make that work? And I point not only to yourself, but like Ripper Owens or Johnny Gioeli, you guys that are constantly working and constantly on the road. How do you make a relationship work in a lifestyle where the lifestyle and the travel is so against a long-term relationship?
Well, for starters, especially the latter part of my career, the past 10, 15 years, it hasn't really been that I'm on the road for like the old days. You back in the days when an artist was relevant, an artist was selling millions, an artist had to go on the road for anywhere from 12 to 18 months on each record.
Right.
Those days never struck my career. Those kind of events never struck me as an artist. And of course, the last 10 or 15 years, I've been doing more touring, but it's more concentrated. I could be gone for 6 weeks and then have the next 6 months off. That's how you balance it. You find ways of either bringing the family along, bringing the wife along, however you can share that experience with them while you are working, without creating that separation or that division for too long, where you basically come home and you're complete strangers. Back in those days, when a band like Journey released an album, they were on the road for that album for a good 14 months.
Right.
That could end and split up even the strongest relationships. This day and age, it's not what it used to be, and I never hit that mark. So I find ways of balancing it out and having a proper balance to the whole situation.
And after those 6 weeks, she has a nice long list to keep you busy, right?
Oh, yeah. That's the best part about what we do for a living, is like you go on stage and you're a rock star. The world sees you as a certain way, and then you come home and you're taking out the trash.
Very nice, man. Well, Jeff, obviously you do have this great new release. It's out May 6th. It is called Complicated. It is Jeff Scott Soto. And Jeff, where should we tell people to go to keep up with you and tour dates and blah, 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 all that stuff?
My socials are the best. I'm only on 3. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. My socials, if it's got a blue badge next to it with my name, then it's me. And that's better than any other source in terms of real time. And it's all live as it's all happening.
Very good. Well, one more time, the album is called Complicated. It is Jeff Scott Soto. It's out on May 6th. And Jeff, as always, man, thanks for joining me here on CHRIS Aiken Presents.
You're the man, Chris. Thank you so much for having me once again.
What's going on, everybody? It's Chris Aiken, and just wanted to share a very limited edition of autographed books that I found that I am selling right now over at CHRIS Akin Books. I've got this one. I know it doesn't look like it has anything on the cover, but it's got a lot inside. This is my book, Cause and Effect Metallica, about the Metallica Black Album. It's one of my more successful books, and I ran out of copies long ago to sign and sell. But I found a few, and I do mean very few. So if you want one, there's like, I don't know, maybe 5 of them that are available for sale as of today. So get it now over at ChrisAkinBooks.com, ChrisAkinBooks.com. Cause and Effect Metallica on sale now.